and this kind of happened, and I thought about this, and he goes, and you were rattled. And I went, absolutely. He goes, dude, if that ever happens to you again, you call me and I will come find you. And it was just this beautiful to know that there was not only a spiritual connection between the game and the show, and there's now this cool connection between myself and Ashley and Jeffrey and Merle being also involved in this. But that spiritual connection flows from the top down. Neil is not only a showrunner, but the way that he wants to work with his actors is reflected in Craig as well. And so having that friendship and having that connection has been just an unexpected gift.
Hello and welcome to the movie podcast after show for The Last of Us episode 8. My name is Shabazz, and of course, I'm joined by my Cordyceps compadres. I didn't forget this time. I remembered, and I only remembered because Anthony did remind me before we started filming. So that is a little bit of a behind the scenes thing. And speaking of Anthony, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. I am excited to talk about our special guest as well as episode 8.
Yeah, man, you sound really excited. Daniel, what about you? How are you doing today?
I'm doing very excited, Shabazz. Let me tell you right now.
I'm sorry, are you on the Titanic?
Whole life is a game of luck. No, I am stoked. Anthony said it. We have an incredible special guest joining us. Episode 8. We are on the precipice of the season finale of The Last of Us. So, um, what more can you say? This is an exciting time here on the movie podcast for sure.
Absolutely. And as my compadres have already alluded, we do have a very, that's three varies, special guest joining us for this episode to talk about The Last of Us, especially episode 8, and especially their character. And if you're not familiar with who this person is, let me first tell you their name. Troy Baker. Now you know everything about them because you definitely heard of Troy Baker. Troy Baker has been one of the staples in video game performance capture, along with voice as well. And even TV shows. Like he's a voice work master. TV shows, movies, wherever it is, you've heard his voice, and now you'll finally get to see his face in all its glory as well. Episode 8 is a very, very important episode because it keeps propelling things forward, obviously, in our story, but really makes Ellie the forefront of this episode. We've been seeing a lot happening, obviously, about her learning about who she is, and we in episode 7 we saw the Left Behind story occur, but this is really about her survival in this one. And again, Troy Baker is joining us to talk about it. Troy Baker also was Joel in the game. So that's also something that's very, very important to remember as well. This is a fantastic conversation that Daniel, you and I got to have with him. And I want to definitely thank Crave and HBO for allowing us this amazing, amazing opportunity. This is our first time ever really doing an after show for a series. And we came out swinging. We got one of the greats to join us. So Daniel, please, what are your thoughts on everything that kind of happened with Troy and everything that we got to discuss with them?
It's pretty wild because as soon as we join the room, Troy's just like, "Hey, I recognize that little hammer behind you," and it literally is my Mjolnir because, of course, he was in God of War, and he was in Uncharted 4, and he was in The Last of Us and Last of Us Part 2, and all of these games and the Arkham series. He's Two-Face, and he's the Arkham Knight. It's like all of these things that are surrounding me in my room. Troy Baker has some type of connection to them. He's voiced Batman. He's been in a bunch of different Marvel stuff. He was in Miles Morales. So it's just like he is everywhere. Troy Baker is video games. So to have him joining us on the show, especially after bringing Joel to life in The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2, there's no better person we could have had on the show uh, as a really, as a commencement to what's coming next week with the ending of the season. So really incredible opportunity. I'm so grateful that we had the chance to talk with him. He was every bit as just insightful and generous and kind as you would hope someone like this is. And it's another person that we've wanted to have on the show for a really long time. So the fact that we were able to do it, it's amazing. And it's only going to make this episode even better. When they're already amazing, these after shows,
It's true. It's true.
it's going to make it even better.
And of course, he has an amazing setup just like us. He really kind of fit in with our backgrounds too. So really huge shout out to him for having an amazing podcast setup. It's not like he has a podcast that he does at all. It's not a competing
No,
podcast, but it might
he's
be
not a
one day.
professional voice actor or
Not at all.
performer that he would need that, or musician
No.
that he would need this technology. No,
I don't even know what you're talking
definitely not.
about. Anthony, what about yourself? You got to obviously watch our conversation with him. What did you think of it?
I was just surprised how philosophical he was with, his character and just just how he treats Joel as almost like a real person, as this person that I guess he built from the ground up. He is that voice, and whenever I see Joel, I know Pedro Pascal is what the general audience sees, but when I see Joel, I'll always see Troy Baker, and that voice and that look and everything that we got. I would encourage you, the audience, to go look up Troy Baker's performance capture on YouTube, because there's a ton of footage out there. Some of the best.
Yeah.
we talk about Andy Serkis with Gollum and all that. Troy Baker and Joel throughout the last two Last of Us games,
Up there.
these are just real raw performances. Fantastic. I can't wait to see what's next with him. And this is probably the first time I've seen him on camera, in terms of in a show or a movie, and I hope he gets more work doing this kind of stuff, because he was fantastic.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I hope that we get to see him in film and television a lot more, because he's phenomenal in this episode, and I can't wait to talk more about it. But before I do, I just want to kind of give a little bit of information about who we are, because if it's your first time finding the movie podcast, well, welcome and hello. We have a lot of great episodes out there, which I'm going to have Daniel kick it off in a few minutes here, or a couple seconds. I don't think I'm going to take that long.
Give me about 30 minutes. I
30
gotta warm
minutes.
up.
All right.
Yeah.
You
I'll
take
warm
your
up.
time. You think about what you have to say, and then I'll get over to you. But we are the Movie Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at the Movie Podcast, and make sure you're subscribed, because we drop new episodes with interviews, reviews, just like this one, all the time. We have our main episodes that drop on Mondays as well. You can join our Discord if you want to continue this conversation about movies, television, and especially The Last of Us. We're having some great discussions in there. All those links are available down below. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed as well. And if you're listening to us on any kind of podcast platform, if you can rate us on there, leave a comment on there, we would love that as well, because we love reading out the comments. We love seeing 5 stars on there too. So very, very helpful. Daniel, please let our audience know, new and old.
We have a lot of incredible episodes, new and old, coming your way, including our interview with director David F. Sandberg, who directed the Shazam! Fury of the Gods film, which will be releasing very, very soon. We have our reactions coming out this week, and then our review next week. We also have more of the cast that will be joining us on the show, so stay tuned for that. Of course, we did have Katie Sackhoff join us on the show as well, too, talking all about The Mandalorian Season 3, and lots more special guests coming, lots more reviews coming later this week. You could also look forward to our review of Scream 6, which is going to be spoiler free. You don't want to miss that one. I promise you, it's a great episode. We're so excited to talk about it. And of course, if you're looking for more of The Last of Us, go look at all of the incredible episodes that Shay's been leading us through every single week here on the Movie Podcast. We have a review breakdown and discussion for every single episode this season, as well as an interview with Lamar Johnson, who played Henry all the way back in episode 5 or 6. We're going back a couple weeks now. So
Wow, yeah.
feels so long ago now. We've been talking about the show since January. It's been a journey, but definitely if you're new to the show, if you just found the Movie Podcast today, Shay told you where to find us. Check out our show notes for all of those links and more. And of course, look at all the incredible Last of Us coverage that we have here. You don't want to miss it.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you for the kind words as well. I love when you're so kind to me, because in person, we're not friends. And I just want to make the audience aware that us three don't like each other, really.
Have we met in person yet?
It's debatable.
Okay.
Some
I
people
hate
will say
you
we
guys.
have. Some people, would you say?
Oh,
I hate
You hate
guys.
us?
I hate
Oh.
you guys.
Well, that's fair. You know who I don't hate, though? Troy Baker. And I'm going to not take too long to get over to him. Of course, right after we're done our interview with Troy Baker, we will still continue our after show and kind of talk a little bit more about the episode and some of the things that we loved about this episode and where it kind of goes. So definitely stay tuned for that. But let's first start off by kicking it over to Troy and myself with Daniel.
Daniel and Shabazz, love it.
It's the dynamic duo, as they call us.
Oh,
Hi, Troy. How are you doing today?
I recognize a prop back there.
Oh,
Look at
it's a
that
very
lovely
famous prop.
little Thor's hammer you have.
yeah. Just hanging around there. There's a
Where
couple
is
different
mine?
Naughty Dog things back there.
Mine is actually, it was back here behind me, and then it's now up there. You can't see everything that's up here, but there's definitely a incredibly self-indulgent monument to myself.
Sure, why not?
The Shrine of Troy Baker. Of
Look, I mean,
course.
look at this. I've got Joel and Ellie over here. I've got Ellie's guitar right there. And then there's just a cornucopia of things that people have been kind enough to send to me, and I'm like, I thought it looks so cool, and then my angle's all wrong.
No, it looks great.
The presence is felt too. I
Yes.
think that's
Okay,
the
that's
most
all that
important.
matters.
Yeah,
I'm
the
a
presence
big
is there.
presence guy.
Yeah, we feel it through this video chat right now.
Well,
Troy-
how can I be of assistance? Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, no, thank you for joining
My
us on the
goodness.
Movie Podcast today. We
Yeah.
cannot understate how much this means to us and how big of fans we are of what you do.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we actually saw you perform at PSX back in 2017 with Ashley Johnson
Oh man,
for The Last of Us Part 2. So this is very much a full circle moment for us here, which is amazing.
what a
we have, like,
beautiful
cell
moment
phone-
that was. That
Oh,
was
it's great.
completely orchestrated by Neil, and he had this crazy idea. I was like, what if we did this moment where Joel and Ellie got to sing, and that's kind of how we introduced. Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about the trailer that we
No,
showed?
no, no, no. Exactly what you're saying is when
Exact
you guys
singing,
performed
yeah.
on stage.
Yeah, it was a surreal. We keep using this word, and you'll hear us, but myself, Neil, and Craig, and everybody just talk about how surreal it is because we've lived with this story. Neil, of course, even longer, but for Ashley and I, it's been over 12 years now from the first time that were sat down and said, "Here's the story," and walked through beat for beat what it was going to be, and then we stepped foot on a stage that's no longer there. Culver
Yeah.
Stages, that sound stage that we shot this on, is no longer there. And then I'll never forget this. We at the time I smoked, and they walked us through, and they're like, "You want to take a break?" And we're like, "Yeah." So I go outside and I light a cigarette, and Ashley and I are both just kind of staring off wide-eyed into the distance. And I said, "Do you realize that if this thing sucks, it's completely because of us?" Because the story was so good. And I think that's been my favorite thing now, seeing it being adapted to where it's at now, is that if you tell a good story, it doesn't matter the medium.
Yeah.
A good story in the capable hands of the truly skilled will resonate with an audience just as much on one screen as it does the other.
Absolutely. And speaking of amazing stories, The Last of Us HBO series opened the story of these characters to a whole new audience.
Yeah.
Is there someone in your life that maybe wasn't able to experience the game who is now familiar with the story of Joel and Ellie?
Absolutely. And I remember asking Neil, like, back, I'm going to pour my tea. You're going to hear this lovely sound.
That's
Oh,
cool.
this-
ASMR.
I love
ASMR.
Yeah,
us. I like it.
I've done it before, and people were like, "Are you peeing right now?" I'm like, "I'm committed to this interview. I will not get
Don't
up."
get up.
It's so funny. But yeah, there's a lot of people, because I asked Neil, I was like, why do this, man? We've shot it, we've scored it, we've put it out. It's the most cinematic game ever. It's like, maybe this is the way that people should just experience this story. And there's so much that they're missing out on, like this episode that's coming up Sunday night, where there's something that happens when you've been playing as Joel the entire time, and now you see that beautiful poor bunny moment, and there's Ellie standing by herself, and then you push forward on that left stick and Ellie moves, and there's this whole new connection that you have with this character. How do you translate that from that experience to someone who's just observing it somewhat passively? And the answer to that is you get Craig Mazin in here along with Neil Druckmann to be able to understand the sense memory of what that was, and the two of them being able to be so skilled and adept at bringing it to that, all with the intention of answering the question that I asked Neil, which is, why do this?
Mhm.
And he said, because at the end of the day, there are people that will not pick up the controller and experience this story, and I believe that their story is good enough to bring it to those people. So yeah, there's people in my family, there's friends that I have that have heard me talk about it,
Mhm.
and have like tertiarily had some awareness of it, but now it's the thing that they live for every Sunday night. And
Yeah.
they're like, you didn't tell me it was this good. I was like, actually, I did. But it doesn't matter. By hook or by crook, however we have to get you in here, I'm just glad
Yeah.
that people are seeing how good this story is.
It's true, and I'm curious for yourself. Did your feelings change about the series? You know, it was originally announced that it was going to be a movie all the way back when.
Yeah.
Did it change for you when it's like, okay, now we're doing a series? We have Craig and we have Neil on board for this.
I've learned to trust Neil implicitly. His ideas are far better than mine. And I think I have some pretty good ideas. But when Neil, I really have to applaud him for this, because him sitting down and go, okay, how do I distill this story down into 2 hours? Something that is 6, 8, 10, 12 hours worth of material. What do I do? And I really respect him going through that process of getting to the point where it's like, it just doesn't work. It keeps breaking, and there's still so much that we are missing out on. And there's a lot of what I love about what this series does is, whereas a movie you would have to reduce locations, reduce characters, and start like, well, now this character and this character, we're just going to put them together and do one. What we've been able to do with the series, with Craig and Neil going, no, let's slow it down and let's expand on these characters. Let's spend 20 years with Bill and Frank and find out. Let's spend even more time with Riley and find out why that was so foundational with Ellie, but then also be able to replicate without just, it's more of an emulation, because we're not reshooting stuff, right? Last of Us has been remade now plenty of times. We're doing something different. So for me, my feelings have changed about it. And what I've learned is that there's characters that I have a deeper connection to than I ever thought I would. And I'm glad that the patience and the restraint that Neil had to be able to wait for this to have literally lightning in a bottle, the right opportunity. We're going to see a lot of adaptations of video games into TV and film from this, and we've already have in the past. But to my knowledge, this is the only game that I can think of that has been adapted after one game. Like if you look, everything Tomb Raider, Halo, Uncharted, all of those, the seeking of the adaptation from one medium to another happened after it had proven itself in a second or third or more game. Last of Us out of the gate was the first one where people were like, that story on a different screen right now. And the people keep saying, what do you think the secret of success is? I'm like, well, number one, you have a creator who has the patience to wait for this thing to get the film rights, go back, and they fall back to the original studio, and then along comes another showrunner who hits it out of the park with another wildly successful series that makes him bulletproof. And then you get a blank check from HBO to be able to make one of the most expensive shows ever made. It's like, how do you can't formalize that?
Right.
So this thing is it just shows that it's truly, truly unique. And I love what Craig says. At the end of the day, he cheated because he started with the best story.
Oh,
There you go.
That's very true.
It's very true.
Now we're going to be dropping this episode right after the episode premieres on Sunday. So
have you seen it yet?
spoilers-
We
yes,
Okay,
we
cool.
watched the
Cool.
whole show, and we loved it. Luckily, now
Yeah, man.
your
This would have been a
character-
completely different conversation if that was
Oh,
like the
yeah.
case.
Oh,
yeah.
It's like,
we didn't really like the show
why
that
did you
much.
suck? Why did you choose to be so awful?
Well, speaking of awful, I mean, your
Yeah.
character James is so different from Joel. Was it
Yeah.
weird for you to be in a scene with Ellie and not able to
Yeah.
protect her?
Very, but I mean, the beauty of this is I've been able to kind of look at those stories from so many different angles, and the subsequent conversations that I've had with people since this game has come out, whether I go to like a Comic-Con or just even in conversation, people stop me in the store and they're like, I need to tell you what this story has meant to me. I've been able to see and examine this story and these characters from completely different angles. And now also having these relationships that have lasted over a decade with Ashley Johnson and Jeffrey Pierce and Merle Dandridge and people that we've kind of retained being in the ecosystem of this story. We have subsequently re-examined this story and these characters over the years. And so for me, it was a great position. It's like, oh, that's a great challenge. How do I not make this a bad guy? He's not a villain. This is to him, this is the story of James, and we are experiencing it through his eyes. And to me, I believe that empathy is the key, because one of my favorite quotes, Harryhausen said, the most terrifying beast is one that you can imagine in repose. What does it look like when it sleeps? Because if it sleeps, that means that there's intent, there's will. It's not just this vicious, mindless thing that's happening. It's something that's choosing to do this. So for me, James is a very much of a pragmatist, and there's no violence in his heart. And that's what keeps him from being an equal to David, which is what James wishes that he was and what he recognizes in Ellie. So when Ellie shows up, he immediately clocks, uh-oh, my position with the devil is about to be usurped. And I would much rather be at the right hand of the devil than on the wrong hand of him. So I'm doing everything I can to keep my position with David. And at every turn, she keeps showing up. So all I want to do is get her out of here, get her out of here. It's one of my favorite moments where, I will chase her and come up with this plan of like, I will shoot the horse to stop the girl. But when it comes to do it, I choke. And that's not because I'm afraid. David said, don't do it. It's like, I'm still a good person. And I'm looking down at a 14-year-old girl who's terrified, and I have to end her in cold blood. And that's not who James is.
Right.
That is who David is, though.
Yeah. Did you get to work with Neil and Craig, who this character is, how you wanted to, really portray them on screen?
Yeah, man. It's one of the things that I've really loved is the way that Neil and I specifically work. And before we would shoot anything on The Last of Us, part 1 or part 2, I would always, even Uncharted as well, we had this kind of ritual to where I would call him the night before the rehearsal and just unload all my questions. And typically they're very high level. So even getting into them that late was like, dude, okay, you're talking about, you have any idea how many battles have been fought over this scene and these pages? But it's something that I really love to do and continue to do. And, here I am in Calgary, and Neil is back running Naughty Dog. And I miss those conversations. So I call him up and be like, hey, man, here's what I'm thinking. He's like, I think it's good. Let me ask you these questions. And what if, just always helping me re-examine it from a different perspective that always broadens my idea of not only the character, but just the scene in general, as opposed to keeping it very myopic and based on me. And then also being able to have Craig to do that as well. My favorite moments with Craig is, I'm a fairly confident person, and I've learned to play to my strengths on a mocap stage or in a VO booth, and I feel very comfortable there. Getting on a film set, in a very, very big film set where there's a lot of people going, all right, let's see if you can do this. I felt that pressure. And I had one day specifically where there's a scene that ended up getting cut. There's 2 scenes actually that ended up getting cut. And a lot of it I was taking personally. I thought, oh man, I'm blowing it, because this is like the second day of shooting. And I was like, everybody saw what I could do on the first day. It wasn't going well. It went well, but in my mind, I'm instantly like, relitigating every choice that I made. And the second day, the scene got cut because the nature of like when where we're chasing Ellie, there was a whole original thing where she was going to be doing, switchbacks, and we're chasing her, and she's like doing like the Scooby-Doo, running out one side and coming through the other. And the nature of the location we had just didn't afford that. So like, I just cut that. And it subsequently cut one of my scenes. And so I'm like, oh my God, they're cutting me out of this. I'm bombing. And when I get, when I'm in that position, I have a tendency to get very, very quiet. Otherwise, I'm gregarious. I'm a social butterfly. I like to, Bella talked about this, how I'm just constantly doing voices. And that's true. Like, I'm just wandering around being a goof.
You should do it for a living, I think.
I'm thinking about it. We'll see how this works out. And then maybe I can just transition over that. But I found myself feeling very vulnerable. And the next day, Craig came up to me, and he just has this big, big smile always. He's like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, better than yesterday. He goes, what happened yesterday? He instantly gets concerned. And I said, man, I just, this kind of happened, and I thought about this. And he goes, and you were rattled. And I went, absolutely. He goes, dude, if that ever happens to you again, you call me and I will come find you. And it was just this beautiful to know that there was not only a spiritual connection between the game and the show, and there's now this cool connection between myself and Ashley and Jeffrey and Merle being also involved in this. But that spiritual connection flows from the top down. Neil is not only a showrunner, but the way that he wants to work with his actors is reflected in Craig as well. And so having that friendship and having that connection has been just an unexpected gift.
I love that.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, you never really got to share a scene with Pedro Pascal as Joel. So, how did playing Joel for you, at least in The Last of Us, kind of change you as an artist? And
Oh man,
that feeling of not getting that chance with Pedro kind of bum you out?
no, not at all. I think that my favorite interaction is we first saw each other um, when we were up shooting in a location called Waterton, and I was not I was just not prepared to meet him yet, I guess. And we're having dinner. I thought it would happen on set or base camp or something. And I'm having dinner, and all of a sudden I look, and he passes by, and I'm like, oh, there he is. And he goes, I'll come inside. I'll come inside. And so he comes around, and we're standing there awkwardly and just look at each other. And he's like, hey, man. I'm like, hey, come here, give me a hug. And we get like hug each other real quick. And I look at him, and I take him by the shoulders. I'm just like, man, I have so many questions for you. And he goes, I have none for you. And I was like, oh man, we are going to get along so well. I cannot imagine two more caring, loving, and capable hands for Joel to be in. And the thing that I wanted more than anything, and I've said this so many times because it's so true, I just wanted someone to show me something that I missed with Joel, something that I overlooked, something that was always there, but just looked at from a different angle, kind of what we talked about. And damned if Pedro doesn't do that every episode. There's always something I'm like, oh man, what a great choice, or oh, what an interesting take on this. And there's this physicality and this vulnerability that Pedro brings to this inherently, and he's playing the age so well. Um, I can't wait for everybody to see the final episode.
Oh, yeah.
But he definitely in this episode, I'm like, oh man, that's a really, when we're playing a game, you can only hamstring the character so much because otherwise it feels like, no, I don't want to be, when you're walking around in the snowstorm, it's, you want to have the character reflect the fact that he's still recovering on rebar that went through his liver. But with this show, we have the opportunity to really show how that injury is sustaining, and it's a pervasive injury. It's kind of like with him breaking his hand in the very first episode. That stays with him. It's those little things that I really applaud Craig and Neil, the attention to detail, and going, this is a way that we can do this different to where it doesn't have to feel like people are watching a game.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time, Troy. We are so grateful that you're able to join us, and we
Thank
cannot
you.
wait for everyone to kind of see, you pop up on their television screens again. And we love you. We love the series, and we cannot wait to see what you do next.
That's very kind, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, and all the best with the after show as well too. We've been loving listening every
Yes.
week. So
Thank
Competing
you.
podcast. Yes.
Thank you. It's my new favorite podcast too, so we have that in common.
excellent.
Thanks, gents.
Take care.
Take care.
All the best.
Bye now.
And we are back. What a really, really fun conversation that was. And I think my biggest problem with that whole thing was it was only 15 minutes. I wanted a solid hour with Troy Baker because he is just so much fun to talk to. I felt like we were just starting to scratch the surface with him as well. And I'm glad we got to tell him that we we got to see him perform live at PSX back in 2017, right before The Last of Us Part 2 came out. So that was a wicked, wicked moment to see Ashley Johnson and him up on stage. And we have the footage that we recorded from that day as well.
Yeah.
But Daniel, please, let me know what are your thoughts about this conversation that we had.
It's wild, it's a very surreal thing, from being a fan of Troy's for a decade plus, the fact that we were able to have him on the show. And again, this goes with every single person that we have join us on our show. This is, the movie podcast is an independent platform. We're not on a network. We're not, on a TV station or on a radio station, but this is something that we've grown. And as it's grown, like cordyceps have grown, we've been given some really cool opportunities to talk to some really amazing people. And to have someone like Troy, who's been directly involved with so many of the things that we all love and adore and are part of what makes us who we are, is pretty amazing. And again, 15 minutes, we could have easily gone 2 hours with him. So again, I just want to say thank you to Troy, thank you to Craig for making it happen. And I really hope it's the first of many appearances on the show with him.
Yeah, I think we're just kind of getting started there. So we're definitely going to be seeing a lot more of him. But let's talk a little bit more about this episode. It's episode 8. Obviously, we're kind of starting off a little bit differently. We open up with this character named David in his convent, and we're seeing how he's preaching the good word of the Lord to these people. And there's a lot of mystery because now we're finally seeing groups of people almost like survivors, just kind of like how we did with Jackson. We're now kind of seeing it with another area, and obviously there's a lot of snow, there's a lot of mystery going on, and there's a little girl crying. It appears that her father has just died recently. And then we cut over to Ellie, and Ellie's out there hunting for food. And in the game, what I loved about this moment is this is the first time you get to play as Ellie, and it picks up right after the whole situation with Joel happens, and you see her just going out there with her bow and arrow, and she's hunting a rabbit. In this one, we kind of changed it up a little bit. We got a sniper. We've got a deer that she's looking for. She kills that deer, and we're introduced over to David and David and James, who were looking for this animal. They're like, hey, like what's going on here? Did who killed it? There's got to be someone nearby, and we get that introduction. And it's this nice little standoff between the two because David is very like soft spoken. You don't really know much more about him. He's very very soft spoken. He's trying to just kind of play with Ellie, like, listen, we've got kids that are hungry back in our camp, like please, like, let us take this. Or they say, well, I'm from a big camp too, like let me have it. And they kind of barter and exchange, and eventually we find out that Ellie just wants to get some meds. James, played by the wonderful Troy Baker, goes to get those meds, and we then move on to this next moment. So Anthony, please tell us, like, what did you think about this whole sequence that occurred, the introduction of David, the introduction of James, and his whole convent?
Well, I just want to kind of go back to when I played this game for the first time and I got to this part in the game. It was such a surprise because I didn't expect to play as Ellie and I didn't expect to actually be introduced to another new character, especially David, who was so interesting and complicated and weird. And this whole story that takes place in this episode is just a really one of those examples of how subtle an episode can be, but at the same time be absolutely disturbing. From the beginning, anything that involves some sort of biblical Bible preaching dude, it's going to be some fucked up shit because
Yeah.
that's some. They're
It's
always
gonna be
in
sketchy.
that realm. I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
And he's so unassuming as well too, right? Just
Right.
like those type of characters, you never assume they're going to be dangerous, but he has like this presence still, and that's what makes him dangerous is because you don't expect it. Right?
He's very much like a wild card, and in the game, played by the amazing Nolan North, and who you'll know from playing the Uncharted games. He plays Nathan Drake on those, and again, also another voice
Another
acting,
one. Another one.
another voice acting legend who I think probably is next on our list to have on the show at this point. If we have Troy Baker, we can't not have Nolan North.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, but Anthony, please continue.
Yeah, the setup for this character is super interesting, especially where it leads down to. And there's a lot of hidden signals being sent in the beginning with, like I said, his biblical preaching, as well as how he deals with the dead, especially when he was talking to the daughter of someone who's died recently. Can we bury him right now? It's like, no, we can't because it's too solid. Has great examples of things that we can kind of get away with in terms of how we deal with the death in this camp. But I felt very cold watching this episode. This is the first time like you really see it in Ellie's face, even Troy's face, James's face. It's like just very cold. It must have been cold in Calgary when they were shooting this. It just felt lonely and cold, and everyone was just
Very frigid.
So, and Joel, poor Joel, just in a basement dying, clearly doesn't know what's happening. You can clearly
He's just
see
chilling.
he's just in pain. Like Pedro Pascal does such a great job of just being still. Like,
That's what he's known for.
like he's just
known for being still.
It's Anthony's so right though, because the character like Joel has so much presence, and
Right.
he grunts and he just kind of moves, and there's so much that he does even when he's lying helpless. And like Ellie's like, even when Ellie tells him like, like don't fall asleep, or I know we're going a little bit ahead, but it's like he is lying helpless, but you just see those eyes open and you're just like, oh my God, I will do anything you tell me to do.
That's just Pedro Pascal in general. If he just looks at me, I'm like, I'll do whatever you want.
You're right. Tell me what to do.
I'll
Tell
do
me
it.
what to do, Pedro.
I'll do it, Pedro. But yeah, from this point we kind of move over to, I think really this is like the main chunk of the episode where Ellie and David kind of start to figure out more about each other, and David now starts to kind of reveal that card about himself of, maybe you shouldn't be trusting me. Maybe I'm not the person that you think that I am. And he starts to reveal, like, I believe everything happens for a reason. We sent out some people recently to go look for food and other supplies, and you know what, they got attacked by this crazy man, and he was with this little girl. And Ellie kind of starts to realize, okay, some shit's going down here. He knows that it's me. Something's going on. James comes in, tosses her the medicine. She goes on about her way. And then we start to realize that, okay, this isn't working out well for Ellie and Joel. She needs to kind of get out of there. She needs to get Joel up and running so they can kind of move back to the convent, where now David, his real evil side's coming out. That girl that was crying for her dead dad is now saying, like, you should go out, kill them, like find them and kill them. And man, David does this slap on this poor girl, knocks the wind out of her, and now we see that, you know he might have been someone that is preaching the good word, but it doesn't mean that he's still a good person. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of happening here. You cut to the next day. They're the whole group of people are going from this town over to find Joel and Ellie. Joel is still kind of lying there. Ellie's trying to get him up. Ellie's fighting. She runs out. She gets captured, and this is a pivotal moment. This whole capture sequence that kind of happens. And Daniel, please, I'd love to kick it over to you to talk more about it.
This moments where Joel, like kind of what we were talking a little about earlier, where it's like Ellie's just like, Joel, I'm going to lead them away. Don't fall asleep. Takes the knife, and Pedro's just there, just like stoic as ever, holding this knife, just helpless, right? And going back to to David smacking that girl and telling her, you have a father. I'm your father. Like you follow me. It is such a scary sentiment to have someone tell you, especially having just lost your father, and now to have this person assert their authority and their dominance over you like that in a public forum. Very, very scary. And then I think this is where we see that they're doing some cooking in the kitchen as well here too, but we don't
Yeah, we
don't linger on it too much.
We don't linger
It's
on it too
venison.
much. It's venison.
Yeah.
The mom that's her husband who's passed away. The
Mhm.
wife, she's like, hey, wait, what kind of meat is this?
Is this
Oh, it's
Wagyu?
venison. Is this premium grade? Oh
But yeah,
man.
it's a wild moment, and then to see Ellie captured, and there's just a rush of probably emotions going through her head, because she's like, I know if I leave Joel, I'm going to die. I know if I stay here, I'm going to die. And it really puts her in a corner. And to have someone like that who is just so, whatever happens, it's like you are cornering a wild animal at this point with Ellie. And seeing her confined and locked up, it's heartbreaking. But we get some really incredible moments that come. And some of my favorite moments of all time in The Last of Us happen right here.
Yes. This in the game is one of those moments where my heart is racing really, really fast, because we already know that Ellie's a fighter. Like, she's a complete survivor. She's a badass. I have no doubts when it comes to Ellie. But it's in this moment where you really see Ellie has no fear at all. Like, she will fuck you up.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony, I love to kind of get your take on the scene where Ellie and David are kind of going back and forth with each other, and she maybe does something to his finger.
Yeah, the Ellie cuts through his sanctimonious bullshit right away. Like, he knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He knows it, and she's like, I don't trust you. Especially after finding out that the secret's out. They fucking eat people. And there was an ear underneath the friggin' chopping the chopping block, or the chopping table. It's interesting to see this dynamic, because this is a second person who clearly sees Ellie as a leader. He says to her, I see you as a leader. I see you helping me build this community up. And then we had this weird situation where he goes to the cage and he puts his hand on the cage, and now it's indicating that maybe this guy's
a predator.
a
He's
predator.
a predator for sure.
Absolutely.
He puts his hand there, and she puts his hand, like she's working him, right? She knows who this guy is, and she's like, breaks his finger. He smashes her in the head through the cage. And the best line was, tell everyone I'm the little girl who broke your fucking finger. And there's blood gushing through the teeth. It's so gritty. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to get out of here no matter what. Mm-hmm. And he's shocked. And I think David didn't know he woke a sleeping dragon at that moment.
And I think that's what David loves, right? And I think that's even something that in our conversations with Troy, he even said that, David sees what Ellie is capable of, right? And that's what he loves. And he wants that, and he wants to really, in a twisted way, if we're going back a few episodes, or sorry, not even a few episodes, just last episode, when we hear like Captain Quank telling, Ellie like the potential that she has for Fedra, to be a soldier of Fedra. This is like a really more fucked up version of it, where it's just like David telling her, this is the potential you and I have together.
You can lead my cannibal squad.
Lions and hyenas together. You know what I mean? Like that's what it kind of felt like, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just like that, such a predatory thing.
Right.
And then Ellie, like Anthony said, just gives that iconic line, and then David follows that up with, what was it you said again?
Tiny little pieces.
Oh, baby. What a sequence. It gave me chills in the game, and it gave me chills all over again watching in here. So I'm just so excited we get to talk about it. Oh my God. And I think really quickly, sorry, Shay.
No, go ahead.
Another thing that Troy mentioned to us is that David sees in her, I think, what he doesn't see in other people in the community,
right?
Especially James, who Troy plays. So he looks for that. He looks for that equal, and he wants to mold them in his own vision.
Because James has his doubt, and I mean, one of the things that I love that Troy got to really confirm for us is that moment where he shoots the horse that Ellie's riding to escape, and then he gets up to Ellie and he's about to shoot her. There's a lot of ways that can be, I think, conveyed, but to know that there was a hesitation of like, am I doing the right thing? Like, but James is kind of having this back and forth in himself, and the doubt that he's having that David can see. David doesn't see that at all in Ellie. David sees a natural born leader, which exactly what Captain Quank said in the last episode, which Daniel, we didn't mention it last time, but you had the opportunity to speak to Terry Chen just last year.
Summer, yeah. Terry Chen was on our show.
Yeah.
And it's wild. I'm like, that's just the legacy at the movie podcast right
Absolutely.
now. And then same thing happened when we had, Shamir Anderson, Lamar Johnson.
Oh my God.
That
was
Deshane.
Embarrassing. I totally forgot about
all
it.
of these guys all know each other, all good friends. I'm like, how do you guys all know each other? This is wild.
And we also forgot to mention to Shamir that we spoke with Trevante on the show before. Like this is his co-star in the film.
A lot of things happen on the movie podcast. A lot of things. So
yeah.
It's just funny. It's just funny that happened. But yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, Deshane Williams, sorry, who joined us. Another, Canadian Deshane Williams, Shamir Anderson, Lamar Johnson, all friends, and I think all from Scarborough as well too. It's like they're all killing it right now.
Dude, we're gonna be in that group. We're gonna be, when we're interviewed by someone else, they're gonna be like, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. This. It's just, the best thing about living in Toronto is just being able to have all these connections.
Everyone knows
people
each other
who've lived here, who've grown up here.
I love that. And Terry Chen, another Canadian who's been in everything. So wild that we have another. Oh my goodness!
Oh, I'm sorry. Is Siri wanting to join this podcast?
Siri is also another special guest. I think she's upset that she wasn't featured earlier, where we spotlighted Troy. I guess they want equal billing. So
Siri wanted to ask a couple questions with Troy as well.
She did.
Said no.
I did want to mention this is the second, we'll say, Messiah complex that we've experienced in this series, because we have David right now who thinks he's some sort of god or like he's some cult leader, and then we had Kathleen, who also had a Messiah complex, and they also had a character who kind of doubted what she was doing but was still on board, like Perry. There's these little things that they kind of populate into this show, and I don't know if it's like this hidden message or something, but it's just something I just realized.
No,
yeah, and I think Melanie.
And
Yeah,
then
Melanie
yeah,
too, who plays Kathleen, Melanie
Linsky.
Linsky, right? Like she's another person who we spoke about not having like that, like you wouldn't assume that that this
Right.
person would be the one who's leading things, but that's the world we're in right now. Like the people who are survivors, that's it.
and even Marlene, who also has her kind of complex Messiah complex going. Like there's these little things that they've populated. So there's a lot of biblical influences in this show that I think they properly inputted, especially in a
Yeah.
world where there's in a dystopian type of world where people will follow other people because at this point they have nothing else for them.
Yeah, and
Right.
listen, Anthony, like that's a great point you bring up because you look at the book of Revelations, if we're going biblical, this is the end of the world. Like the humanity is being wiped out. And David even says that he didn't believe in this. He didn't follow this or really get into it until the end of the world's happened. So it's very interesting that, these biblical aspirations of these people really only came out when everything was ended.
No, it's very true, very very true. Um, but then obviously we finally get to the point where David's got to take matters into his own hands. Him and James place Ellie on the table. Ellie reveals that she's infected, and of course, shit starts to go down. And here is where Ellie gets to really fuck people up. She gets up, grabs that butcher's knife, pop right into Mr. Troy Baker's neck, aka James, aka Mr. Joel, who dies by the hands of Ellie, which is horrible. That's so sad. So sad
Nice
to
knowing you,
see.
man. Nice
Nice
knowing you,
knowing you.
Troy.
And then we get to one of my most aggravating missions in the game where you have to hide from David while he's chasing you around in the restaurant. And obviously, this show's got cheat codes, so we get to kind of just get right to it. The restaurant's burning. Ellie jumps on David and gives him the old stab, and then just she sees red. Literally, she sees red. She starts to just attack. And this reminded me a lot of that moment in the beginning of this series where Joel is just beating the hell out of the Fedra agent, and you see Ellie in the background just kind of watching. And I remember Craig Mazin saying that this is where Ellie becomes activated. She's
Yeah.
watching this and she's seeing this and she's all like, "This is going down." And right at that moment, of course, Ellie's seeing it too. Ellie's seeing red. She's going crazy, hacking away.
She's preparing dinner for the people of that village right now because they're
Oh,
definitely going to eat David.
oh, they're definitely. I mean, he's also going to be nice and crispy too. He'll be nice and cooked.
Well done.
Barbecue.
Well done.
It's so funny
Absolutely.
that all these things are happening in like a restaurant designed for like barbecue.
Yeah,
Isn't
like
that
at
funny?
a ski resort.
Yeah, it's,
Basically,
I think
right?
it's like,
It
like
it's a
looks
nice
like
chalet.
Todd's Steakhouse and Ribs. That's
Oh,
literally
God.
the restaurant name. It's just so
Yeah.
funny that
Human
all
ribs.
this.
Yeah.
Can we
Yeah.
mention Joel for a second? Like
Yes,
the
that's what I was
sequence?
literally gonna get to right now. That
Oh
moment.
my gosh.
Do you want to go ahead and talk about it?
No, well, I just want to say that like that's such a scary moment because I feel like Joel loved torturing these two. They just, that scene, he stabs
did.
the guy in the knee. And he's like, "I'll
Yep.
rip your fucking kneecap." And I'm like,
Yep.
"Holy shit." Like I literally could see him just going to pull back and that kneecap flying. And then just how he tortures these two and like I feel like he really likes it. I don't know why,
Because
but
I
I feel
think he
like
didn't do it for a while, right? Like, yeah, like that was a
it's like
no, but
smoking,
I-
right? Like
Yeah.
No, but he
I
has
remember
right.
this.
Like these are things that, and Dane, like you're mentioning right now, these are things that he's done, and especially when you play the second game, you get to find out more about Joel's past and his shadiness, and we hear about it a lot in this show as well. When he was on both sides, so he's definitely seen it all and done it all.
It's that's an incredible sequence. Again, another one that was so fun to play through in the game and just kind of experience. And when Joel does the thing where that we saw earlier when they were in the cabin with the two oh my goodness, I'm blanking on their names, but with the older couple a couple episodes ago before they met up with Tommy, we're just like, I'm going to get you to point on the map, tell me where it is, and I'll believe you. Like you tell me it better be the same where he points. And the fact that Joel is just like that, he doesn't care what this guy's telling him. He's like, it's okay, I believed him, and then kills him anyway.
Ugh,
My God, what a scene. And
yeah.
you're also watching this as an audience member at the edge of your seat. You're like, please, like, let's go get her,
Go
go
get
save
her.
Ellie, go save Ellie. But guess what? Ellie saved herself.
Yeah, she's hacking away at David. She's turning him into minced meat,
Yeah,
and
kebabs, I think. Yeah.
yeah, she's got skewers. And
Yeah.
then she comes out of this burning restaurant, and Joel just happens to be there. He gets there and grabs her, holds onto her, and he's like, "It's okay, it's okay." And a very emotional end to this episode. So, from Anthony, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on what this episode was like for you and how you enjoyed it.
Oh, I enjoy it. Like I said, this is one of those episodes which is subtle. It's its own thing, but it represents a lot of things that's happening in the Last of Us world. I thought the ending, the decimation of David and Ellie kind of like coming out and being her own person, but also showcasing, this heart of violence. She just not only like hacked like that sequence where the camera's like focused on her and she's chopping and blood is going all over the camera. It just really showcases where her character will eventually be or who she will be. I think it says a lot. I know she was, there was an attempted rape on her as well, which
Yeah.
is
It's very
like,
quick.
what else can we
You don't
put on
notice.
this poor
Yeah.
girl in this
Right.
show? But yeah, and that end sequence with Joel, and she's just in shock that she had to go through all this alone.
Yeah.
Again, it just builds onto her character. It's Ellie is a unique person, and I think we'll learn a little bit more in the next episode about her and where she goes from there. But she's very unique in this game. She's very unique in the series, and there's only one of her. And I think a lot of people saw it and or see it, and yeah, I really enjoyed this story about her.
Yeah. And if we don't do it enough, and I truly think we don't, Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal are phenomenal. They deserve every single award and accolade and praise that is coming towards them, because Bella, especially in this episode, I mean, again, every episode, but like in this episode too, she's just so good. I felt every single moment of her pain. I felt every single jab and smash that she did on David, her tears, her anger, her frustration. Bella Ramsey is Ellie. Man, there's nobody else now. I mean, she's killing it. Like, she's so good. She's personified in this human form that now we can finally see. So, wow. Daniel, please give us your thoughts on this entire episode.
Yeah, Anthony mentioned it really quickly too. Yeah, David does try and assault her, like sexually assault her, and because you see him almost like go for his pants before she really turns over and cuts him to pieces. Um, and one of the moments following that, as she leaves the burning cabin, when Joel approaches. I remember the first time we watched it. It's so just unassuming. It is just so just like, I'm coming to get you. And then Ellie, who is just besides herself in shock, in anguish, in fear, enraged, literally, when Joel is hugging her, she's still stabbing. Like, she is still like, if you go, she's like literally pounding on on Joel's shoulder, like she's stabbing him still, because she is in that attack mode. I'm going to fight to survive right now. And it's not until like Joel really calms her down. It's like, it's okay. Like, I'm here. Like, and just hugs her. And when the episode ends, you're just like, what did I just experience? Like, what did I just go through? Because it is a roller coaster from hunting at the beginning of this episode, quiet, peaceful, not really sure what's going on with Joel, because we had a season change as well too, right? In the game, this is a big moment where we have the big banner that comes up and says winter, and we don't know how long it's been. We don't know if Joel is alive still. It's not until we go back and we kind of see this journey that she's been on this whole episode that's, like, what more can you say about the performances in this? Like, if you weren't convinced already, 8 episodes in, Joel and Ellie, Pedro and Bella are just everything. And this episode proves it. This episode is just phenomenal. And we're really teeing up. I can't believe we're already getting to the finale, but like, we're really teeing up a finale that I think a lot of people are going to be talking about for a very long time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is another phenomenal episode, an episode that dives deeper and deeper into the strengths of Ellie. We get to see her survival, and that really she doesn't need anybody else, and she can do this. But to have Joel there to be her wisdom, to be her guide, is really what the most important thing is. And Bella Ramsey absolutely completely crushes it. And we have Troy Baker as James, and David is so good as well. I loved so much about this episode. I love that it was pretty much exactly like how the game plays it out,
Mhm.
and it gave me that sense of fear, that sense of dread that the game gave, and I got it in such a bite-sized 1 hour package. Um, wow, what a phenomenal episode! And again, I want to give a huge shout out to Troy Baker at the beginning of our episode, who got to join us and talk more about this. No
Troy
big
Baker was
deal.
on the show.
No
Troy
big
Baker
deal.
was on the show.
Not
Okay.
a like he didn't just totally join us to talk about this episode and about his
No.
character, not at all. But that was wicked. That was a really fun moment. So huge shout out to Crave and HBO for giving us this opportunity. So thank you so much for that. Of course, if you are following us at the Movie Podcast, you must be following us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and you're seeing all the crazy things that we're dropping. We're gonna have more interviews, more reviews coming out because the year is just starting. We, like Daniel mentioned, there is Scream reviews coming out. There are other reviews that have already come out, like Creed, and also Shazam will be coming out soon too. So please stay tuned for that. You can follow us here, like I mentioned, and also on YouTube. You can subscribe to us. You can see our lovely faces. We are very handsome men because we're all very nice and well kept with our shaved faces. Daniel has got the mustache going on right now, which looks
I'm in
great.
my Ted Lasso era. Right now.
Yes, season 3 is on its way, so you're getting prepared for that. I love that.
Yes.
Of-
Or the Mario movie. It's either or.
either
It's,
or.
It's depends who you ask.
I
And
think
ask me.
I think
It's both.
I think Anthony should go mustache only as well to kind of get that Luigi going.
No,
Okay,
Just shuts it down right away.
no.
Anthony and I could do a really great Mario and Luigi, I think.
absolutely.
Maybe
we,
for
we
Halloween.
could, but I don't know about that. You know,
We could,
It is
but
we
no.
could. No.
We could, but I'll be a bomb maybe, or Bowser.
Be a Bob-omb? Or you'd be a great
I'd be
Bowser.
a good
you
Bowser.
could. Yeah.
You'd be a very good Bowser. Okay,
Yeah.
these are okay.
You know
we'll,
what?
we'll talk. We'll plan it.
Well,
we
we'll
got
discuss
some months. to
once we're
plan.
done recording. We'll have a little conversation after this.
Yeah, we'll have our first Halloween 2023 meeting in March. That's let's do it.
October is a great month, like I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Of course, thank you so much for joining us for our after show. Next week is the finale. I can't believe it. You guys are in for such a treat. If you have no idea about what is incoming, strap in because the next episode is gonna make you want to just, I don't know, run into traffic. I have no idea what else you could do.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it sounds
Jay.
horrible, but it makes you go crazy
Okay.
because it's that good of an episode.
Maybe watch it then. I don't know.
Maybe don't watch it. It might be dangerous. Don't watch it then. That was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.